Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video, and today we are going to be doing another review. I'm going to be reviewing episode 2 of The Last of Us, and man, must I say that episode did not disappoint. It exceeded the expectations I had after the first one. If you haven't seen the review on the first one, I will have a link down below. Go ahead and check that out. But yeah, no, the first episode was really good, I'd have to say, with The Last of Us. A lot of things I liked with it carried on into the next episode as expected, where just things such as they're sticking to the source material very well, switching things in ways that were favorable, good ways that I enjoyed, and they continue to do more of that here, which I was very happy to see and very excited about. I definitely gotta say I enjoyed this episode a good bit more than I did the first episode. So this review's definitely gonna have a few spoilers in it, so if you haven't seen the episode for that, you've been warned, be wary. But the one thing I really like that they did with this one is I was expecting this episode to pick up just right where the last episode left off, but they didn't do that. Instead, what they did is they kind of showed what happened in a different area of the world. This episode started off in Indonesia. It started where government officials went and they got this professor from the University of Indonesia who knows a bunch about viruses and stuff, and had her go. And essentially they showed kind of what their, case zero was there, and they're kind of talking to her, and then they're like, okay, well, what do we have to do? Is there a medicine? Is there a vaccine? And it's where they did a good job at showing the severity of what the virus is and what the infection is, and where she's kind of like, there's nothing we can do. The only thing she said they could do would be to bomb the city and everybody in it, which I like that. That was a good way to show the severity of this. Is literally there's no way to fix this except for to kill everybody and destroy whatever virus is in that part of the city, which of course this is at the time where it's, the first infected finding out, so this is where they didn't know it was widespread across what I'm assuming the entire globe. Due to their go, they went to a completely different area of the world. They didn't just show a case in the US, they showed a case in Indonesia. So I thought that was really cool, and that's where just doing more story building and expanding on top of everything, which I liked a lot and wasn't expecting. So then after we got through that whole part, that's where they finally kind of pick up where the last one left off. So after the part where they're in Indonesia, it picks up pretty much with where we left off last, with Ellie, Joel, and Tess. And they're pretty much just in this one place where they stayed overnight. And it starts off where Ellie wakes up and you just have Joel and Tess just staring at her with their guns ready, because they really don't know what to do with her, because they now know she's infected, to which nothing's happened to her in that time though, and her bite hasn't gone any worse, but they're still very skeptical of it, rightfully so, because they're kind of not trying to get infected and die either. So they did a good job with the actors. The actors did a phenomenal job still being able to kind of convey that distrust that they had with her. And as the episode progresses, you kind of see as they get to trust her more, which again, it's just really good pacing. They did a good job expanding that. Then we move on to just simply cinematography, stuff like that. Like when they walk out of that room and they go and see the destroyed city, it just looked incredible. Just all the greenery that was all over it, the buildings that had fallen over, just everything, the attention to detail that they put into just filming everything was perfect. Everything looked so good. It looked like the game, which I really liked. Then next, in this episode, we definitely get to see a lot more of the infected, and we get to learn a lot more about the infected. One of my favorite parts was how they introduced the clickers, which was done phenomenally well. It was done a good bit different in the game, where in the game, you're walking through and kind of just reach a part where it's like, hey, be quiet, clickers, and then you go kill all the clickers and move on. Meanwhile in this, it's where they move into a museum, and they're walking through the museum. They think everything's dead in the museum because all the cordyceps and stuff that's left over from the infected that transmits the infection, all the stuff is dry, which means it's dead. So they think they're all fine, and then they eventually reach a part where they find somebody who recently died in a more brutal manner than normal, which was where they're like, okay, there's something here. And that's where the episode, it gets a lot more serious. And even Ellie, who's very lighthearted through a lot of it, she makes a lot of jokes, she likes to have fun. It's just her personality from the game carries very well over into the show, and the actor does a phenomenal job of portraying that. But they portray the severeness of what they're gonna encounter, where she doesn't know what's going on, but they're pretty much like, we gotta be dead silent, not quiet, but they gotta be silent. So that's where you get to see them moving up through until eventually you reach the point where they're in the room with the clickers. And the way the clickers were done, from just how they were moving in the show, how the actors they had moving, the makeup and everything was incredible. They looked exactly pretty much how they looked in the game. Then the next thing they kind of portrayed more is, because in the game, the way that the infection commonly was transmitted, other than you being bitten, was through spores, which pretty much was just in the air. You breathe it in, you're going to be infected. That's just completely removed from the show in general. It's now pretty much this thing that comes out of their mouth of the infection that infects them. So it changes things slightly, but not really. But the biggest difference is now all of the infected are interconnected in a way where, say you step on a live cordyceps, it triggers all the infected, whether they're dormant, whether they're just chilling in a different area, and just a horde will come after you if you step on this, which this is where it came into play very much at the end when they finally get to the Capitol building. They realize all the fireflies are dead. And this is one thing I kind of like that they did differently from the game. In the game, what happened was, after you figure out Tess is infected, a bunch of the military comes in, and then you have a whole shooting area where you're killing a bunch of the military and moving through the Capitol building. Meanwhile, in this, you find out that Tess is infected, and then in the game, it was the military killed all the fireflies, but in this, it's pretty much one of the fireflies got infected. They all kind of just turned on each other. So that was how the fireflies died. So how they kind of switched up in this was, the cordyceps started rising out of the ground. They stepped on one, like, oh no, a whole horde of infected starts sprinting towards them. So this is where the biggest difference was. They've kind of removed all the shooting gallery areas, at least so far from the game, which I'm guessing they're going to continue doing throughout the show, because even as I kind of mentioned in the review of the first episode, the pacing between a game and a show is just completely different, where having shooting galleries in a game, parts where you're just shooting enemies moving through them, makes sense in a game because you're actually playing. And meanwhile, in a show, though, it doesn't really make sense to just watch them killing people for seemingly no reason. It can kind of mess up the pacing. So instead, in this, you have the whole horde coming in. Tessa's kind of final stand in this is different, where she doesn't face the military and try and kill as many of them. She fills pretty much the whole bottom part of the Capitol building with gasoline, grenades, lights it on fire, blows up the entire building, killing at least most of the infected to our knowledge, because that's where the episode ends, is after she blows up the Capitol building. Very good episode, a lot better than the first. If you haven't seen this show, I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you played the game. You will not be disappointed at all. Just everything's done very well, and they actually seem to care about the source material and sticking to it. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. That is going to be all for today. I will see you all again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.